July 11th, 2015. I vividly remember my dad waking me up as he was on the phone with my mom. She had called me from work to tell me that Satoru Iwata had passed away. Now, I had only turned 9 years old only 9 days before this happened, and I lived a pretty happy childhood, but this news, it really got to me. I remember just spending the rest of the day crying in my room. It was like losing a close family member, because to me, Iwata was family. I grew up watching him. Mario and Nintendo are my entire life, and Mr. Iwata was at the center of all of it. Whenever I watch an old Nintendo Direct, I always smile ear to ear whenever I see him. He was kind, he was warm, comforting, he was genuine, he was one of us, and you could feel his passion. My favorite quote of his was, "On my business card, I am a corporate president, but in my mind, I am a game developer, but in my heart, I am a gamer." This philosophy, I believe, is the main reason why Nintendo has been able to capture the hearts of so many people, including mine. Their games were made with us, the fans, in mind. But ever since Mr. Iwata passed away, it feels like the true spirit of Nintendo died with him. Now, everything that I say in this video is my opinion and my opinion alone, written from my thoughts and experiences with the company over the past 10 years. Now, all of you are welcome to disagree with me, and I'm sure I'll anger some people with some of the stuff that I say here, and that's okay. But I've been wanting to get this off my chest for a while now, and I do apologize for not making the most well-structured video out there, but hey, this is my first rodeo, so cut me some slack, would you? Now, let's get into this thing. I believe we started to see the effects of Mr. Iwata's passing relatively quickly. Nintendo's holiday lineup for 2015 was pretty weak to say the least. We got lackluster releases like Mario Tennis Ultra Smash and Animal Crossing Amiibo Festival, and Ultra Smash was literally as bare bones as Dry Bones himself. It was nothing more than a $50 tech demo for a basic HD tennis game with Mario characters. Now, I've been doing a lot of thinking in the lead up to making this video, and I genuinely don't think Mr. Iwata would have allowed Ultra Smash to release in this state that it did if he were still alive. Now, yes, I know that there were some lousy Nintendo games released when he was alive, but this was a next level cash grab. This trend of releasing unfinished games started at the tail end of the Wii U era, and continues to this very day. Mario Tennis Ultra Smash on the Nintendo Switch released with barely any content. It took them a full year of consistent updates until it became a relatively decent package. Mario Golf Super Rush also suffered from this terrible business model, except they didn't even update it for a full year. The game was released in June, and the final update came out in November of that same year. Nintendo Switch Sports, a sequel to the free Wii Sports, cost $40 at launch, and it didn't even include all of the original games from the 2006 tech demo. Now that was unacceptable to me, but to make things even worse, Golf wasn't available yet. We had to wait until November for that. Yes, Golf. And to make things even worse, Basketball took them a year and a half to get into the game when it was in Wii Sports Resort when that launched. Now the next example is what seemed to piss people off the most, and that was Mario Strikers Battle League. This series was beloved on the GameCube and Wii, and modern Nintendo managed to screw that one up too. Like, come on, this game didn't even have Daisy at launch. Yes, that Daisy. The one that's only ever appeared in the sports games, wasn't even in the sports games when it was released. Her and many other fan favorite characters were slowly drip fed to us, and just like Super Rush, received its final update within the same year it was released. And here's a huge detail I haven't mentioned yet. All of those games, with the exception of Switch Sports, were a full $60. Full price for games that had less content than their counterparts on the Wii. Price and personality. Those are the two biggest aspects that have changed since Iwata's passing, in my opinion. Going into the launch of the Nintendo Switch 2, nobody was really talking about their excitement for the console or any of the games, but rather the ludicrous pricing of Mario Kart World. Nintendo was the first major company to introduce the $80 price point for their games, and this received very well-deserved backlash. Now, I've had Mario Kart World since the day it launched, but I got it through the bundle, so I only had to pay $50 for it, and I personally think it's worth $50. I do not think it's worth $80. I do not think it's worth that price in any universe. I'm sorry, but I just can't justify it. And I'm sure the next 3D Mario game will be $80 as well, but it's really sad to see how money-hungry Nintendo has truly become. For most of their time making video game consoles, Nintendo was usually always the cheap family-friendly option. Back when I was growing up, you could get a Nintendo 2DS and a game for only $80, which is very ironic because the game that was usually in that bundle was Mario Kart 7. And these days, Mario Kart seems to be a rich people's luxury item with how much the new one costs. And speaking of my childhood, Nintendo always had a budget line for their games. Wii, Wii U, and 3DS. Now that's what I grew up with. and literally all of them had the Nintendo Selects line. The big heavy hitter games always got a price decrease later on in the system's life. Super Mario 3D World and 3D Land. The big new 3D Mario games for their respective systems got marked down to only $20. Super Mario Galaxy, the reason I'm here today and the game that made me fall in love with Mario and gaming in general, the version I played growing up with was the Nintendo Select version. If somebody today barely got into the Nintendo Switch ecosystem for the first time, Nintendo isn't throwing them any sort of bone whatsoever. Mario Odyssey is still full price, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe is still $60 even though Mario Kart World's out now. It doesn't feel like Nintendo's looking out for the little guy anymore. After the success of the Nintendo Switch, that made Nintendo a little too cocky and think that they can get away with anything. And yes, I know Nintendo had this same cockiness after the success of the Wii and the DS. The situation with the 3DS was very similar to what we're going through now with the pricing of the Switch 2. When Nintendo got it wrong with the 3DS, they listened to the fans, dropped the price, and gave us free Game Boy Advance games for our troubles. This time, they're not going to lower anything. In fact, they told us that we should expect price increases. Hell, they've already went and increased the price of all 3 original Switch models. Of course, they're trying to use the tariffs as an excuse, but I think this would have happened regardless. The price of the Switch 2 was already decided before any tariffs took effect anyway. Now, I think this new greedy business model is only going to continue to get worse in this new generation. The only way that I could see Nintendo dropping the price of anything is if the Nintendo Switch 2 sales fall off a cliff in the coming months. Now, I'm also really nervous to see how this generation plays out because the Switch 2 is the first full new console generation that didn't have any input from Mr. Iwata in any capacity. Very famously worked very hard on the original Switch during his final days, and I'm positive he must have been involved at least a little bit with the big launch games like Zelda Breath of the Wild and Mario Odyssey. But I'm really worried that Mr. Iwata's influence and vision will fade away as more time passes since his death. The next major shift that I wanted to talk about is Nintendo's lack of communication and personality in the modern age. And as somebody who grew up in the Wii U and Nintendo 3DS eras, this hurts me the most. I wish I knew as a kid just how truly good I had it. When I was growing up, we practically had a new Nintendo Direct every single month. Back in 2013, we literally had a Nintendo Direct just 1 week before Christmas. We had presentations in July, August, September, October. It literally didn't matter what month it was, we were always getting new Directs from Nintendo. And I know some of you are gonna say, well, quality over quantity, but in my opinion, in the modern day, some of these Directs aren't very quality either when it's just third-party games and farming simulators. I just miss the days when Nintendo was frequently showing us what they were up to. And when looking back at the old Directs, I do realize that they did have some pacing issues and they didn't really reveal anything earth-shattering. But it's the small things for me. I loved watching those little skits with Mr. Iwata, Reggie, Bill Trinan, and the rest of the team. Yes, they were silly, but that's part of the Nintendo charm. You could tell that all of those people were having a lot of fun making these Directs, and it was even more fun for me to watch them. These modern Directs, they just don't have any personality whatsoever. Whoever's presenting the news always looks like he has a gun pointed at his head and is being forced to read the technical jargon off the teleprompter, which is exactly what they do, let's be honest here. And the Nintendo Switch 2 Direct back in April didn't even feel like a Direct at all. The 3 guys presenting I had never seen before in my entire life. They had no personality or a Nintendo charm that I grew up loving, and the only thing that they were doing was talking about boring-ass technical specs about the Switch 2, even though for my entire life growing up, Nintendo never cared about specs, but that's a whole other can of worms I'm not even going to get into here. But my main point here is, I miss Iwata, I miss Reggie, I miss Bill Trinan on these Directs. It was especially charming with Mr. Iwata because he took the time to learn English. He spoke English for us Western fans to show that he cared about us. And by the way, just want to clear this up, everything that I'm saying in this video is strictly about the corporate faces of Nintendo. I am not talking about the developers at all. They still know how to make magic. Donkey Kong Bonanza is one of my favorite games ever now. This is strictly about the people at the top. And speaking of, the current president of Nintendo, Shuntaro Furukawa, speaks fluent English. So why isn't he giving us the news on any of these Nintendo Directs, huh? Well, I'll tell you why I think so. Furukawa's entire career at Nintendo was spent in corporate. He was not a developer like Mr. Iwata. He doesn't know what that's like. He was only hired to increase corporate profits, and it definitely shows. And now we're gonna go from bad to worse because we're gonna talk about the American side for a little bit. Our dear leader, one Douglas Bowser, has been president of Nintendo of America since 2019, and I actually had a lot of hope at first because he actually did participate in a pretty charming Reggie and Iwata-esque segment at E3 2019, but that turns out that it was his first and last appearance on camera. That bald fraud hasn't appeared on camera since then. And you know, I'm not really surprised by any of that. Nintendo in both Japan and USA are led by dudes who don't really care about us and whose hearts aren't really in it, and their main focus is moolah. I miss Reggie so much too. Like, I didn't really realize how important he was until he was already gone. On the very first Nintendo Direct ever in 2011, Reggie was the host of it. Nearly all of the funny skits featured Reggie. And this year, he even took a shot at his former employer, Nintendo, because he posted an article saying about how much he fought for Wii Sports to be bundled in with the original Wii. Because yes, even though I love Iwata, he wanted to charge for the Wii Sports as well, and Reggie was the one that convinced them to bundle it with the Wii here in North America, which is one of the reasons why the Wii was so successful. And he posted that in response to all the backlash Nintendo was getting, because they decided to put the Nintendo Switch 2 Welcome Tour as a separate eShop purchase and not bundle it in with the Switch 2 like everybody else wanted it to be. And while I was looking back at all of those old Nintendo Directs, I came to a sad realization, and that's that Nintendo, they don't really communicate with us anymore. I was talking earlier about how frequently we had Nintendo Directs, and most of those Directs actually featured the same games throughout the year. And I can totally understand why some people wouldn't like that compared to what we have today, since there's no real new games getting shown off. But for me personally, I loved how Nintendo used to communicate and openly show off the progress they were making on their games. It was really charming to me, and it felt like it was an artist who was incredibly proud of his work, excited to show it off to the public. Like, for me, I just love having something to be excited about. I love Nintendo game speculation. It's one of my favorite things to do, and it just makes me happy to talk about. Like, Mario Kart 8 was first revealed in January 2013. It was released in May 2014. Like, I love stuff like that. I love having something to look forward to and to speculate about for over a year. And I think it's just a great way to bring the community together, give us something to talk to for a really long time, and I think that's great for Nintendo. Like, Mario Kart World was first shown in January, and it was already out in June. Like, sure, yes, we do get to play it sooner, but this was the first Mario Kart game in 11 years. Like, I didn't really have the time to fully mentally process how huge of a moment that was. Like, if that makes any sense. Like, I feel like I didn't really have time to get excited for it. Like, it can kind of feel overwhelming sometimes. One of my favorite things about a new game is the speculation and hype cycle around it, and I feel like we barely get to have that these days. And on a similar note, I think the entire Metroid Prime 4 situation would have been handled very differently if Mr. Iwata was still here with us. They first announced it at E3 2017, they didn't show anything, they just gave us a logo. Then they made that video in 2019 with all the businessman and crocodile tears saying how they had to restart development, and it was radio silence for years after that. I think Mr. Iwata would have been very transparent about the entire thing. He would have given us updates the entire time, he would have reassured us that everything was going to be okay. He communicated everything to us like we were his friends, because that's how he saw us. Everything today is just so corporate, so secretive when it doesn't have to be like that. Give us monthly directs again. Give us updates on these games that we are so excited to play. Let the developers share their stories and philosophies with us. Post concept art on social media. The possibilities are truly endless with this sort of stuff, and it's really sad because I know corporate Nintendo will never do it. And that brings me to the final part of the video, and that is how soulless modern Nintendo has infected the consoles as well. I know the Wii U was a giant catastrophic failure, but it feels like Nintendo got the wrong idea with that and just wanted to go to the complete opposite direction with literally everything. Now, I understand why they would do that, but I think they went way too far with it. The UI of the Switch and Switch 2 is the epitome of modern Nintendo. Bland, boring, and no charm whatsoever. The Wii, Wii U, and 3DS had bright, vibrant, and bubbly home screens. The Wii U in particular was just so nice to look at and listen to. It felt like you were truly part of the community with how the Miis were there and how alive everything felt. With the 3DS, there were so many themes and badges you could add to your home screen. The 3DS was yours. It was a reflection of you and your personality, and everybody's home screen was different, and I loved that. The Switch is as lifeless as it comes. You must do everything their way now. You can't have it your way, their way. There's no colors, no themes, no badges, nothing. Everything is just so sterile and dead. There's no music either. The Wii menu has become a part of our culture. That's how iconic it was. The Switch menu and the eShop, nothing. Now for the Switch one, I can sorta give it a pass, you know, since like I said, Nintendo basically wanted to do everything opposite of what the Wii U had, but it stayed the same for the Switch too. That's what really pissed me off. A console that is much more powerful, there's no excuses this time around. Nintendo should have done more, and it really pisses me off that they didn't even try this time. For the Switch 2, they cut corners in a literal and figurative sense because the game icons now have a rounded edge to them. And wow, that makes me feel a hell of a lot better about spending $500 on a new system now! But all the jokes aside, I just don't get it these days. Most of the creative minds are still there. Miyamoto is still going strong. Why is he okay with this lifeless home menu? It just doesn't make sense to me. Nintendo proved that they can still make amazing games. They're still capable of this stuff. And it's so infuriating because they choose not to do this. And I hope one day in the near future, Nintendo finds themselves again. If they continue down this path of corporate greed and lifeless businessmen and no communication, pretty soon it's not going to matter how good the games are anymore because people won't want to support a company that clearly really just wants to suck every penny out of them. I think Mr. Iwata would be very disappointed in the state of Nintendo today. And I'm disappointed too. It's not the same company that I grew up loving and admiring. I miss when Nintendo was Nintendo. I miss Iwata. I miss Reggie. I miss the skits. I miss the monthly Nintendo Directs. I miss when our game consoles had life and charm to them. Like I said earlier, I truly hope Nintendo finds themselves again. So hope you all enjoyed my little rant today. I know it wasn't very well organized, but I just wanted to put all my thoughts down on paper and just yap. But let me know what you think about all the points that I raised. If you agree, disagree, doesn't matter to me. And I fully realize here that yes, I am a giant hypocrite because I bought the Switch 2 and I'm still gonna buy all the Mario games that are released for it. So yes, I am a hypocrite. And if you think that disqualifies me from speaking about this, I fully respect that. But to wrap it up, it's been 10 years since Mr. Iwata passed away. I miss him every day, think about him every single day. Every time when I play one of my games, I think about Mr. Iwata and I'm grateful to him. I wish he was still here with us, and I hope he knows just how much of an impact he's had on my life and the lives of millions of others. And I want to leave you all with this. When Nintendo was at its lowest point in the Wii U era, instead of firing his employees, Mr. Iwata, being the incredible guy that he was, cut his own salary in half. He did this multiple times because he didn't want to ruin the morale of his developers. That's the guy that Mr. Iwata was, and I want to be just like him. Thanks for watching.